Okay, good afternoon, everybody. It is Angie Atkinson, and I am here with the lovely and talented Dana Morningstar. Dana, welcome back.
Thank you for having me.
I'm always happy to have you. Dana and I do this stream usually every other week or every week, but opposite channels every week. Last week we were not here, and I'm sure it was my fault. Um, but we'll be here next week on Dana's channel, which is Thrive After Abuse, right here on YouTube. She's also thriveafterabuse.com and Thrive After Abuse on Facebook and Insta and Twitter and all the places all across the internet. So today, a couple of things really quick. If you look in the description below, you will see a link at queenbeing.com/ask-Angie. If you have questions, you don't get them answered, or you want them answered privately, go ahead and take a look at that after the stream today. But while everybody's popping in, hello, everybody. Hello. We are just going to jump right into our discussion. So before the chat, Dana and I were talking about, or before our stream, we were talking about empaths and narcissists. And I've noticed several, sorry about that. I noticed several people commented that they wanted to know about why narcissists seem to be attracted to empaths. So my take on it to begin with is it's not really about people being empaths as much as it's about people being um, kind, people being willing to put themselves second for someone they care about, people who are polite, people pleasers, um, people who react strongly to someone else's emotion and do whatever they can to try to fix it. That to a narcissist is like pure gold. It's the perfect kind of supply. So, yeah, narcissists do tend to be attracted to people who are those things. And there are lots of different tests they give us and all kinds of stuff. And we'll get into that. But Dana, what are your thoughts just starting off today?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think, by and large, narcissists are attracted to supply. And sometimes it's about they're looking for a specific type of person, and sometimes they're just looking for opportunity.
Hmm.
So, sometimes, like you said, it's the people that are quick to put themselves second, and it could be as little as they just happen to notice that you have a certain profession, that you're a
Right.
caregiver by nature, that you work in, healthcare field, that you're a life coach, that you're a therapist, that you're a social worker, that you're a teacher, and that you're kind of a natural helper,
Hmm.
that you love animals or children, these kinds of things, or that you're polite, you hold the door open for people, you smile. Uh, the downside to this, even though there is truth to that, is I think it's really important for survivors to realize that we don't have to go around changing all of these things about ourselves in order to stop narcissists from being attracted to us. Uh, they're going to be attracted to whoever they're going to be attracted to for any number of reasons, and this is where healthy boundaries come into play. And so it's more important, because I hear this all the time. People watch different TV shows and talk shows, and they'll have some sort of supposed mental health professional on there who talks about, oh, predators can sniff out their victim from a mile away, and all that does is create anxiety and fear, and especially in survivors, and it creates this degree of hypervigilance where they start turning themselves inside and out, trying to change everything so that they can stop attracting problematic people. But the big thing to focus on is knowing when your boundaries are crossed and what to do when that happens.
Yep.
That's the only thing that'll really keep any of us safe, because you can walk around with a frown on your face and take up you could start being an attorney and change your profession and change your look and change all of these things. But if you still don't know when your boundaries are being violated and how to handle that when it happens, you're still vulnerable.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And then you're right. Boundaries is what it's all about. I mean, I've seen people say, I'm just going to start acting more like a narcissist because
Mm-hmm.
that's the only way. And it's not the only way. You can still be a kind person without letting people walk all over you. It's hard. Don't get me wrong, but it's doable. I mean, I, let me just a show of hands in the just a show of hands in the chat. Looking at Dana, how many of you think Dana's a nice person? Raise your hand.
Oh,
Right. I think Dana's a nice person, but I also know that Dana doesn't let people walk on her, and it's because she has learned to put those boundaries in place, right, Dana? Would you agree with that?
yeah. And it's it's an ever evolving process. I've come a long way.
Of course,
Yes.
right. We all have our moments. Let me I'm pretty nice too, but I also, I'm pretty good about the boundaries these days, not
Mhm.
always, but you know, I'm a human like everybody else, but we do your best. Yeah, just Heather said, "How do you raise your hand?" Or somebody did. Oh, that was Jen. Just say hi or anything you want to say. They're like, "What?" Some people are putting
Yeah,
hands
is
up.
there a special raise your hand button? I was thinking the same thing. That's so funny. I was like, is there a little emoji that you can
Yeah, well, there's somebody's got the emoji like this. I mean, anyway, and you got some people with two hands up. Okay, back to it. So yeah, so boundaries, that's where it has to go. But um, I I think that's it. And here's another side of this coin. Um, a lot of empaths tend to be attracted to narcissists, and in my case, it was because, well, I think part of it is it's what we know. A lot of times we come out of a home where we were raised with a narcissist or whatever. But I think the other side of that coin is that sometimes it's about, um, we think we can help them. We think they're broken. They tell us a sob story, or they act a certain kind of way, and we call them out on it, and they apologize. I'm sorry, I have this trauma in my background. And a lot of times we come from the same types of households as narcissists come from, and so it feels normal and familiar to us, and we think, I always thought I can help this person be better. And in fact, I would bet you if you polled everybody I've ever dated, like 90% of them would say they came out feeling better than they went in, about themselves, because that was a thing that I did. And I was always trying to lift up people's self-esteem in general. So I don't know, Dana, did you experience something like that?
Yes, and it took me a really long time to see it. Um, Years. It took me probably even decades, honestly,
Yeah.
to really kind of see where I was going wrong
Hmm.
with being attracted to certain types of people. And um, it was, I think a lot of it, I feel like I kind of am a natural helper.
Yeah.
And it's just I've always been that way ever since I was a little girl. And I am totally fine with being that way, but it's
Right.
comfortable for me.
Yeah.
And so that was the role that's comfortable for me. And so I tended to gravitate towards friendships and relationships where I knew the role to play. And it tends to be, if you're a fixer, you tend to find yourself attracted to a lot of broken people.
Yeah.
And so it's important. It took a while. It was very uncomfortable for a very long time trying to find relationships that were based off of mutuality, that were not a kind of a one up or a one down position,
Yeah.
that were more on the same level. And it literally took years to really get comfortable with that, because it kind of gave me anxiety of, well, if I can't help, then I'm replaceable, right? Like I'm not really needed. And if I'm not needed, then what else do I have to really offer? But a lot
Right.
of this, so much of this was subconscious. And so now I still enjoy being able to support other people and helping and doing all of these things, but it's in a much more empowered way, and it's in a much more balanced way. And it's not in like a self-esteem type way. Like my self-esteem isn't tied up in that.
Right.
Um, it's very different now. So a lot of the similar kind of behavior as far as helping, but a totally different mindset when it comes to it.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think that's it. I mean, people are talking about personality types right now, um, in the chat, and Dorothy said, I'm an ENFP, which that is also what I am, Dorothy. Um, and that means, and then there's some of the tests will give you a dash A or a dash T, which means assertive and turbulent. And what's interesting is my middle son, my oldest one at home, has the same. He's also ENFP like me, but I'm ENFPA and he is ENFPT. And I think it's just because he's a teenager and he's still got that drama factor a little more. As you get older, you kind of lose that. Yeah, Dorothy. um, ENFP is, what is it? Okay, remind me. So
Emotional,
yeah, yeah, I think so. Emotion,
intuitive.
intuitive, feeling, and perceptive,
Yeah.
as opposed to, no, wait, E. Let me look at that really quick
Okay.
because I think it's something else. Because I know INFP is, oh, it's extroverted, which when I did it, I was like 51% E and 49% I introvert, which makes sense, because that's literally, yeah. Oh, see, Jen is INFPA. Yeah, I was this close to INFPA. Anyway, and then intuitive meaning that you know what we all know what intuitive means, and then
Mhm.
feeling as opposed to what's the other thing? I should just look. I should know what I'm talking about. What's the F? What is the opposite of feeling? Everybody, do you guys know in the chat? And then perceiving instead of judging. So I'm more likely to, you know, like observe a situation rather than to instantly judge it or a person or whatever. And then assertive as opposed to turbulent. So I'm more likely to say this is how it is now that I'm an adult than I am to cause drama or be part of drama regarding a situation. Have you done this test, Dana? Have you done that before?
I have, but it's been years and I don't remember what the result was. I would need to take it again.
Yeah, it's if ever now don't do it right now, you guys, because we're all chatting here. But if
Mhm.
anybody wants to take it, it's free. It's at 16personalities.com, and maybe we can circle back around and see what Dana is next time. Um,
Okay.
yeah, it's really fun. I know, like Lise, my one of my coaches on my team, is INFJ, and apparently that's one of the most rare types. So anyway. But like I said, as I've gotten older, the need to not judge people has been taught to me by some very painful lessons over the years.
Mhm.
Kids humbled me, and so did everything else in my life. So, oh, she says Oh, Dorothy said she remembers that the T means your self worth is a little low, which makes a lot of sense. Um, my son being a shy teenager, but he's not E, he's INFP dash T. Anyway, it's irrelevant to everybody here. I should probably stop talking about that because they'll demonetize me. He's a kid. Anyway, oh, Dana, do you mind if I side subvert for
Sure.
just okay, side note, for those of you who aren't aware, there's this big COPPA thing going on with YouTube where any video, any channel that could be potentially um, kid fr- that a kid might want to watch, which I don't really think mine is part of that, or Dana's is part of that. But I did take down some animations that I had put up before where I had done like animated interactions and stuff to show people what things looked like. Um, anyway, I took those down. But anything that kids might watch on YouTube, those channels will be killed after the first of the year. They're just basically going to make it impossible for them to reach um, viewers because of the COPPA thing. So if you watch any channels like that, or even if you watch this channel, there's a petition you can sign. If you go to, I know Nick Nimmin has it up on his channel somewhere. There's a lot of, just type in COPPA petition for YouTubers or whatever. And if anybody wants to sign it, you could help out a lot of people. So check
Mhm.
that out. I'm probably not going to make a dedicated video on this because I know a lot of creators are, but I don't believe that I'm going to be directly affected by this issue, but it's really bad. They're going to charge people $42,000 if someone determines that their video may be kid friendly. And so, for example, my assistant has a DIY channel, and her most popular video is on slime, making slime. Well, she didn't make the video for kids; she made it for moms, but it's watched by kids. So because of that, basically she's going to lose everything on her channel because all of her highest rated videos might also be kid rated, kid friendly. So
That's heartbreaking. I've been kind of trying to keep up with this, but
yeah.
haven't been doing the best job. One of my favorite YouTube channels is a guy from somewhere down south, and his show is called Craftman, and
Hmm.
it's CRAF. There's no T.
Yeah.
CRAFSMAN. And he's just this old Southern guy who does crafts. It's just kind of like this good, wholesome show, and he does
Yeah.
art projects. And I just love that show
Yeah.
so much. It's so relaxing. And yikes, I need to
We should all sign that petition.
yeah.
Yeah, because anything, and it's ridiculous that the guidelines, and they're going to charge a YouTuber for each video that they don't mark this way because they turn off comments for those videos. They stop putting them in search. They stop with personalized ads. Basically, the videos are going to be killed. They're going to be not findable unless you go to that person's channel and look at it. And that's going to be basically killing the videos. There will be no statistics kept on them, you know, and then each video that they mess up and don't check the right way, don't mark as kid friendly or not, they're gonna charge $42,000 and change to that creator for that individual video. I mean, it's really
That's
bad.
outrageous.
Yeah, it's gonna kill. I mean, one of the highest earning channels on YouTube recently was Ryan's toy review. It's dead. You know, they're killing all these channels, so it's really bad. And it could really affect all of us, you know, even us, if we talk about something that kids might be interested in, or if our thumbnail looks some kind, I mean, it's really bad. So we should be very careful. Okay, I'm
Yeah.
going to stop talking about it, but I do hope everybody hears this, and just I hope you guys really take action if you feel like you want to support creators on this platform, because otherwise I think what's going to happen is the kids stuff is going to go away completely. And if it doesn't, you know, it's going to be lower quality because the higher quality creators can't make content unless they can eat, you know.
Mhm.
So anyway, all right, moving right along.
Wow.
Sorry, do you want to go to the chat?
Yeah, sure.
All
I'm
right.
reading people are saying, yeah, there's too much censorship going on YouTube. And Life
Yeah,
is a Journey is saying, even my comments get deleted and censored, even when I don't post anything bad.
yeah,
And
you
then
should
Tanya asks, where is the petition?
let me, while Dana's reading through some of these, let me find
Okay.
it, and I'll link it in the
That
chat.
that would be great, because Clint also follows that up about where's the petition, people want to know.
Yeah.
Um,
um,
and Love Goddess says, well, at least YouTube's thinking about the kids. And
we
I
appreciate that, of
and it's
course.
not even necessarily YouTube. My understanding is that it's a larger law that YouTube has to enforce. So like there's certain content that can't be geared towards children.
Right, which
And
I respect and appreciate that as a parent, but
yeah.
there has to be a way that, you know, there has to be a way around this. You know, like I'm telling you right now, PewDiePie, another one of the top ones on this platform,
Mhm.
my kids have watched him for years, and I know he cusses sometimes, but you know, like they watched him before I knew who he was.
Mhm.
And once I figured out who he was, I wasn't thrilled about everything he said, but mostly he played video games, and those were the only ones they wanted to watch. So, you know, I'm just saying, okay, here we go. Right.
Yeah. And while you're looking up that, Love Goddess has a question here. She says,
Sure.
why do narcissists always call to check on you just to see if you're depressed or crying over them? Do they know the pain they put us through, or do they enjoy us down and out? And I would say a lot of times, yes, they want to see you suffer, because for them it's that's how they get their significance. If they
Hmm.
can get an emotional rise out of people,
Yeah.
then that's how they interpret caring. So it's you got to remember, you're dealing with somebody who has a very they're not wired the same. And love, deep feelings, attachment to other people, these are not things that they experience in the way that other people experience it. And so because they don't have, for a normal, quote unquote, normal person,
Hmm.
you would see, okay, this person cares about me. Look at all these kind, compassionate acts. I can tell that there's appreciation and dignity and respect and all of these things there. A narcissist, and a lot of other people as well, borderline personality disorder tends to be one of them, that that sign of caring isn't significant enough. And so that's where you get all of this hot cold behavior. It's sort of like, you know, get away from me, or no, come back. It's this push pull, and it
Yes.
tends to be this make up breakup. And a lot of that, it's subconscious, and it's the sometimes it's the craving of, I want to be somewhat attached, but I'm scared to be attached. And sometimes it's just plain sadistic
Yeah.
of, I want to see you suffer, because the more you suffer, the more I know how significant I am, kind of a thing. But this is why it's important to go gray rock, and to just to turn off that supply pipeline, and realize if somebody's hurting you, they don't care.
Yeah.
So talking to them about it, expressing your feelings, uh, those kinds of things, talk to somebody else
Yeah.
about it. But they're just trying to milk those emotions for all they can.
I totally agree. Yeah. Um, and I apologize that I don't recall the actual question, so I'm not able to comment beyond that. But if
Oh,
if you remind me what it was, I might.
yeah. Yeah, she just was saying, basically, why do narcissists call? Is it because they want to see the damage they've done, or
Oh
do
yeah.
they somehow care?
Yeah, I think exactly what you said. And I also think, in general, there are control issues there. Sometimes they want to make sure they still have you the hook in you just in case, or,
Hmm.
they want to, yeah, I think inevitably there's some measure of control when they do that. And of course, sometimes they want to suck you back in, hoover you and whatnot. But yeah.
Yeah. And
Okay.
even if there is some degree of caring there, it's fleeting because they don't know how to attach deeply to other people, and
Yes.
their behavior is based on how they feel at the moment. So it's not like things have turned a corner and everything's going to be okay. Their behavior is going to continue to be inappropriate. It's just like a little kid, who wants something, then doesn't want something. They're very reactive. They get frustrated, they show it, they get angry, they show it. They
Mhm.
there's no filter, there's no boundaries for
Right.
their behavior. It's just not workable.
Right. Yep.
So
100%. Absolutely. Okay.
that's
This is a comment I just want to. I'm sorry. Did you have
no,
something
no,
else,
go
Dana?
ahead, go ahead.
Just a comment from Nargis. Hi, Nargis. She said narcissists are also attracted to vulnerable. I, I think I think she means people. She wrote pens, but
No.
too. She said I know I was vulnerable in a vulnerable stage and accepted every word of his as basically, the word of God or worship. She worshiped him. And she said, when I woke up, I realized I needed to heal myself in my past. And I think that's where a lot of us find ourselves, when we wake up, so to speak, and we realize, wait a minute, maybe I'm not the crazy one here. I see that a lot. Anyway,
Mhm.
do you have another question that you ready for
Yeah.
us? Mhm.
Here's one from Raul. He says, will the narcissist ever come back after they tried the first time?
I would say, yeah, a lot of them do. I mean, there's obviously no guarantee, but a lot of them will repeatedly over and over again, discard and then suck you back in and discard and suck you back in. I mean, this is a cycle. In fact, there are some narcissistic relationships or toxic relationships where they literally go in this cycle for decades, and maybe they never split up officially, but maybe one person gets the silent treatment for a month every year or something like that, and they just kind of go, or they are always threatening to leave or break up, and it just kind of goes on and on like that. And this is just a very common, it's a cycle. Yes. What were we going to say, Dana?
Yep,
Or what were
I
your
would
thoughts?
agree. And at the end of the day, none of us have a crystal ball.
Right.
So like Angie's saying, there's a really solid chance they will come back.
Hmm.
Um, I wouldn't lose sleep over it. I would just kind of come up with a plan of how you're going to handle that if it happens. So that way you're not completely knocked off balance. If uh, I think in Raul's situation, it was a guy, but I don't remember. I was trying to keep up with the chat, but if he or she comes back, that
Hmm.
you'll know what to do.
Yeah.
So that if you're going to stay no contact, I'm a big fan of writing down all of the reasons this relationship was toxic for you, and then pulling out that letter to yourself. You can title it for when you miss him or her, and reading that letter so it'll remind you of why this is just not working. So nostalgia and denial, I guess, really don't kind of pull you back in.
Hmm.
um, and then just go on with living your life, living your best life. And if they resurface, then they do, and you'll handle it at that time.
Yeah. Yeah. And as much as I would like to say, stop wanting that, I know a lot of people do. I know I even hear from clients who are actually paying for coaching to learn how to not want that. They still secretly want it sometimes. And it's because you're human and I get it. But if you find yourself wanting it, wishing they would come back, just do your best to remember
Hmm.
why it's not the healthiest idea.
Right. And the reality is, it's not even them that we miss. It's the idea, it's the fantasy of who
Exactly.
we thought they were.
That's right.
And it's that idealized stage, and every relationship goes through that. And it's really difficult when somebody is intent. If you've really gone through a huge love bombing phase where you felt so swept off your feet, and it just, they made you feel so, it gave you so much attention, and you were so attracted to them, and there was just this intense chemistry. If somebody's intentionally manufacturing that, then kind of a lot of other any real relationship after that's going to feel kind of flat,
Mm,
because nothing real can compare to somebody who's intentionally trying to charm you to get something out of you.
that's right.
And but if you realize that it's not them that you're attracted to, it's who you thought that they were or who they pretended to be.
Hmm.
And it's also that intense feeling of I want that back. It's how they made you feel. And so realizing that, it's like, oh my gosh, okay, I'm starved out in this certain area. I've been craving attention and affection. This person swooped in and just gave it to me in bucketfuls. I need to go meet this need in a healthier way. And once you do, you'll find that you start craving them a lot less because you're getting that need met elsewhere.
Hmm.
But a lot of people don't do that. It's sort of like, you know, if you are hungry and you're just going to one place, your favorite restaurant to eat, and the restaurant closes down, and then you start feeling hunger pains, and it, you don't ever, you just think, well, I can only eat at this one place because they have what I like to eat. You're going to continue to be really, really hungry. And that's what a lot of people do. And they sit at home and they kind of wait for these feelings to pass. And it can be decades. These things don't tend to fade on their own. So instead of waiting for it to pass, being more proactive and being like, okay, well, I need to go to the grocery store. I need to try some new restaurants. I need to get out there and do something different. I need to get out there and meet new people, cultivate hobbies, build up more of a way that you're feeling a sense of connection to other people, and that the attention and affection and love and all of that in a healthy way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. Good tips. Yeah. Forward looking says, is blame shifting different than gaslighting? And how do you know the difference when you're the target? I mean, I would say that, you know, it's kind blame shifting is, yeah, it's different. Gaslighting is about, I mean, I guess blame shifting could be a part of gaslighting, right? By telling you you did things that you didn't do, or telling you you didn't see them do the things that they did, whatever. But yeah, gaslighting is more about um, messing with your head and making you believe things that aren't true, or making you doubt yourself and your reality, your perception, things like that. Blame shifting often is just denial, deflection. Like, it's not my fault. I didn't do it. You did it, or they did it, or like that old meme where the truck has run into the tree, and it says like, narcissists be like, it's the tree's fault. you know
Hmm.
that it's
Right.
that. Yeah. So, and that's hilarious, but also a little bit true. I've actually heard a narcissist, it wasn't a tree, it was a garage or something. They bumped into a garage, and well, I couldn't get through there, the garage was in the way, and I thought, oh my, okay. That was just woo. Okay.
Yep.
um, anyway, thoughts on that, Dana? Gaslighting versus blame shifting.
Yeah, I think you're right. Both of them are not conducive to healthy communication. Like they're not even in the same zip code as healthy communication.
Right. Right.
Blame shifting is just as crazy making as gaslighting because nothing gets resolved. So
Right.
it's that continual, that inability for a person to be accountable for their behavior, and it's this putting it back on you. Well, yeah, but look what you did. Oh, wow, and it's always put on the other person, so then everybody just spins in circles, and then whatever issue was brought up, basically it just fizzles out because one or more people just become exhausted because nothing's getting resolved.
Exactly.
So
Yeah,
it's still a huge issue
it
worth
is.
worth addressing in a relationship. Gaslighting, I wouldn't address. That would be an instant deal breaker.
Yeah,
But the blame shifting kind of stuff is just poor communication and may or may not be able to be resolved. It's
it's maddening.
it's
It's
maddening.
maddening.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's going to depend on how much, how willing the other person is to learn some different communication skills. But
I mean, the fact is, if somebody is literally like incapable of taking any responsibility, and this for sure, yeah, we have to be willing to take our own responsibility too. I'm not saying that we're innocent over here, right? But if you're dealing with a situation where you have been cut down and made to feel terrible or whatever, and or let's say a deal breaker happens, or an almost deal breaker. Let's say you have a deal that that, you're in a couple and the two of you don't go out to bars unless you're together. And then let's say this person went out to a bar. Well, now you have an issue because you had this agreement, the person broke the agreement. Well, your issue is you broke the agreement, and then their issue is, yeah, but you weren't paying enough attention to me anyway, so that's really your fault. You know what I mean? So, and if they can't ever recognize that, logically, you broke the agreement, could you please acknowledge that you broke the agreement? you know, um, it's, but really, then there's also the back end of that issue, which is, well, how much attention can you possibly give one person? You know what I mean? Maybe
Mhm.
they, maybe that person wanted more attention or time than you had to give them. And, so there's so many issues to look at there. And if it's toxic, one of the first things you'll see is the deflection factor. They don't want to take any responsibility. Like Dana said, yeah, but you did this. Yeah, but you did this. So, and that in their mind excuses their wrongdoing,
Yeah,
right?
and in a way that you can kind of nip that, or at least try to nip that in the bud, is to stay on track. So if you say, there's this issue I have, it really concerns me that you've got I don't know, a coworker who's continuing to text you,
Mhm.
um, you know, I feel like there's something going on. And they say, oh, well, what about you? And, you still talk to your ex-husband, but it's not even really related because it's just about the kids.
Right.
It's, you know what I mean?
Yep.
Instead of getting knocked off track and then where now you're defending yourself, to say, okay, if you have an issue with that, let's keep these issues separate. We can address that, but let's go back and address the issue that I have with your coworker who's texting and calling you at all hours of the night,
Yeah. Yep.
and
I think that's
refusing
smart.
to move on until that's done. But because odds are they don't really have an issue with whatever you're doing. They're just trying to make themselves look better, and
Yeah.
they don't want to address it. So
Right. They don't want to take personal
yeah.
responsibility. Yep. And sometimes I think they think if they do take personal responsibility, then you have none, or you're not going to then admit, and anyway, it's all a whole big mess. But Dana's
Yeah.
right. Go ahead, Dana.
And that's the problem with narcissists, is they're never wrong. It's all about them all of the time. They should be able to do
Exactly.
whatever they want to do with whomever they want to do it with, and as many times. And it's that they don't need that, because they always have a reason, right?
Yeah.
In their mind, they always have a reason. So because they
The
have a
reason negates the
reason,
rules.
it,
or
it
the, yeah.
right, they're able to bend and break the rules. It's a very immature mindset,
Yeah.
and it only applies to them. So that's why it's like trying to talk to a brick wall, because they have their justifications for their behavior. But just because you can justify it doesn't make it mean that it's okay. Like, just because I get frustrated sometimes when I'm driving doesn't mean it's okay for me to pull a gun on somebody at a stoplight,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Um, so, but for them it does. And then they get upset because they're like, well, but this is why I did this. And it's like, well, yeah, okay, but you need to have self-control.
Right. Right.
So here's another question from
Okay.
Sabrina, who
Okay.
asks, why do narcissists lie about their childhood?
That's an interesting question.
Mhm.
I would guess that that's just simply depending on what they're saying about their childhood. Sometimes maybe they're a bit embarrassed about it, or they want to play it up as to more, better than it was, or in some cases, maybe they want you to feel sorry for them. Um, I would assume that it has to do with image or a goal in mind. Um, that would be my assumption. I don't think all narcissists do. I don't think they all lie about their childhood. They might all shine the light a certain kind of way on it, but I don't know that that's necessarily always the case with narcissists. I've seen both. I've seen them
Mhm.
lie and I've seen them tell the truth. So, what are your thoughts, Dana?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think first and foremost, we got to realize that everybody perceives things differently. So it could be an issue of perception.
Yeah.
And again, with narcissists, they continually feel like the victim. It's always their fault. If anybody sets boundaries with them, says no, doesn't give them their way, they feel victimized by this. So that's part of the pathology. And so they really do see it that way. So
Yeah.
it's sort of like, if you get an abusive person, let's say, uh, you catch them cheating, you confront them, they lash out, and then, beat you up, and then the police are
Mhm.
called, and then they go to jail, they blame you. It's
Yeah.
it's that mentality across the board. It's never their fault. It's always somebody else's fault for them having consequences. And so their childhood, it's very skewed, but it can also be completely fabricated in order to gain sympathy, in order to just try to get the upper hand, um, guilt, obligation.
Mhm.
It's a great way to manipulate people and be like, oh well, the world has really done me wrong. And then the helpers of the world think, oh, well, I don't want to be one more person that does this person wrong. I want to be there for them. I want to help fix them. And they may or may not have ever had any issues. I mean, in my situation with the first sociopath I dated, a lot of his past was completely fabricated. Like,
Mm.
not even misperception there, completely fabricated. He lied about being in the military. He lied about
Wow.
um, a lot of things in his childhood. He lied about a former business that he had. He
Mhm.
lied about his divorce from his ex-wife. Everything. He was a pathological liar, and the truth wasn't even close to what he had told me.
Ugh.
So sometimes they do it just because it works.
Yeah. Valid point. Yep. Yep. Like I said, and I think it's again about manipulation and getting some end result from what they're obviously in the case of lying about the military, and
Mhm.
especially the ex-wife, he wanted your attention and knew you wouldn't give the attention without, right? I would assume. I could be wrong, but
Yeah.
I would assume. Okay. I have one from Mrs. Princess Lily, who says, how do I help my children understand a close friend who exhibits toxic behavior? Now, if you're talking about another child, I mean, I need to know how old your kids are. But I'll tell you this with my kids, I just point it out if I see it. And I don't do it in a way where I say you can't be friends with that person unless that person's like clearly dangerous. But if it's a kid their own age and I think, this is a toxic person, I'll simply just point out the behaviors and I'll say, do you see how when you became friends with this person, all of a sudden all your other friends went away or whatever, you know, then, and then I let them make their own decisions. Now, with that being said, it matters how old they are. And it also matters what, like my kids understand about toxic people because they're my kids. So they know, I talk to them about this so that they can, but I let them make the decision themselves, but I don't necessarily allow that toxic kid to come back to my house, even if they're still friends with them at school or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Because if it's somebody who's toxic to the point that I worry about legal issues or whatever, you know what I'm saying? But any thoughts, Dana?
Yeah, I would agree. I think it depends on the age of the children. If they're young, young, then I would do my best to put some distance between that friendship,
Yep.
because uh, in any peer group, even as adults, there's that saying, like, we tend to become the people, like the five people that we hang out with the most. And with kids, that's especially true. But you get one kid in there that's kind of that um, problem child who's getting
Hmm.
into trouble and doing that thing, it'll sink that whole group down,
Yeah.
especially if that kid has any influence. So I'd get your kids busy after school and just get some distance there. If they're young enough, I would just say this, like Angie was saying, I'd call that behavior out. It's not okay for you, little Johnny or little, uh, I don't know, Jill, the way that they talk to their parents, that's not okay.
Right.
And, or that it's not okay to treat animals that way, or it's not okay to lie, or whatever. Make it very, very clear and have that discussion on the way home and not wait.
Right? And if they're old enough where they can understand the concept of gray rock, you don't necessarily even have to use the word gray rock, but you can explain it to them. Explain to them that if that person, says something mean to you or tries to manipulate you or play games between you and your other friend or whatever, this is how you act, and teach your friend this too. You know what I mean? So don't give them attention when they're out doing the things that you don't like. Give them attention when they're doing the things you do like. And by the way, don't forget that person's not allowed to come for the sleepover this weekend. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's just really important to keep the lines of communication open with your kids. My youngest two now are just turned 12 and just turned 16. So like I'm past it. luckily, but I mean, mostly. I mean, I still have to talk to them about their friends, of course, but now it's more complicated because they're almost teens and teens. It's crazy. But
Yeah.
that's what I've taught them Gray Rock. I've taught them how, and my daughter is shockingly good at it. I don't know how she got like that. But anyway,
Mhm.
yeah. Okay, moving on. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Do you have another question, or do I have one? Let me see.
Let's see. Emily says the therapist that she's seeing is telling her that I'm a narcissist. Well, I just wanted to mention, remember, when this is what's so difficult about therapy or life coaching or any of that, you're only the other person, the therapist, your life coach can only go based off of what the person in front of them is saying. And it's going to take a while to kind of suss out what's really going on. And because everybody that we all it's not just narcissists that see their point of view and their justifications.
Mhm.
We all go in painting a picture a certain way. And so every single abuser goes into therapy painting themselves as the victim. Every single one. I've only come across, I think, one that didn't. And that's terrifying when they don't, because that shows you that they're consciously aware that they're doing harm, which is worse.
I agree.
So um, that's what they do. It's very, very rare that a therapist that they're going to go in and say, I'm a narcissist and I've got all these problems and this, that, and the other. That tends to be, more often than not, it tends to be a person who has trouble with boundaries and low self-esteem and has probably been around a bunch of domineering, controlling, narcissistic people,
Yeah.
and they're taking that on and they feel guilty and bad for
Yeah.
some of their maladaptive behaviors, but I highly doubt they're really a narcissist.
I I would agree 100%. And I would suggest also, I think if you everything Dana said is accurate. And I think if you truly were a talk, first of all, let me say this: everyone on the planet is a narcissist technically, but there's a tipping point because technically narcissism is simple self-interest, right? But
Mhm.
when we're at that tipping point where we lose empathy, we don't show empathy, we don't care about what people feel, then here we are, we're toxic. So if you care about how people feel, take a deep breath and relax because you're not toxic. You're not a toxic narcissist. Simple self interest, getting up out of bed in the morning and feeding yourself, that's considered narcissism, technically. You know what I'm saying? So don't dig too deep into that. And also recognize, as Dana said, therapists aren't always up to, they don't teach this stuff in school. As and people who haven't experienced this type of relationship or this type of person, they might know it book wise, but they don't get it. And I'm look, I have clients who are psychologists who learned about this from me.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. And the other, I just talked to one of them last night, and anyway, on the other side of that coin, I have a page on queenbeing.com that talks, and a video that offers like 10 questions um, that you can ask to interview a therapist. So like search up, Angie Atkinson um, therapist questions, here on YouTube or on Google, and you'll find it. And and find yourself a new therapist if you want. It's a
Hmm.
thought. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Did you have anything else to add on that?
Nope. That's.
Okay. Um, Shalimar asks, I'm wondering if you know of any resources on recovery from spiritual abuse. I'm recovering from the effects of a narcissist pastor. I've done several videos on this. There are pages at queenbeing.com on this. Um, one of my first narcissists was also a pastor. Yes, it's common. And Dana is actually one of the first person that said to me that it really clicked. She said narcissists are like cult leaders, and this especially applies to ministers who are narcissists and also other people around the church. Some people, not every church, not every person, but and not any specific religion, or this, so I shouldn't even say church because there's like synagogues and mosques and all of this,
Mhm.
but every narcissism, the toxic behavior, it goes across every race, religion, culture, class, financial group, all the things. So yeah, I do have some resources for that. And I would definitely suggest looking up how narcissists are like co-leaders too, which I've also talked about. And in fact, I think one of the videos I have is Dana and I, our initial discussion on that when she first brought it to my attention. And I was like, that's brilliant. And it is, because there's a direct correlation all the way across the board. Anyway, Dana, your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. This stuff, it's unless you really live it, it's incredibly difficult to explain it to other people. And Jeff is saying here in the chat, he says this is crazy hearing that people are licensed psychologists who do not know about narcissism. And let me just clarify that. They understand about personality disorders. They know about narcissistic personality disorder. The vast majority of them, I would say, really do not understand. They're not able to effectively, accurately identify emotional and psychological abuse
Right.
outside of something that's very blatant and in front of them. And there's not enough about this that's taught. And we all have these perceptions of what something is like.
Yeah.
And abuse is no different. So we all have this perception of what an emotional or psychologically abusive person looks like.
Hmm.
Um, it's really difficult for her, like, oh, this little 80-year-old woman is, horrifically physically abusive or emotionally or psychologically abusive. That just doesn't click for most people, because most people
Yeah.
have this idea of an abusive person being younger, big, strong, and male. So uh, we have to kind of examine our own biases, because we all have them, about what we think certain things can be like. So it's the same thing with mental health professionals. There's this idea, and here's the thing too, unless you've lived it, it's very easy to think, when you've got a person, when you're one-on-one with somebody, and they might be opening up to you, and they might be telling you about, um, I don't know what, being really seemingly vulnerable, and maybe telling you about childhood abuse, or telling you about, uh, that they're sad that they're getting a divorce, or this, that, and the other. It's just normal, decent people tend to take other people at face value. And none of that might not even be true. They might just be saying that to manipulate because it's fun, or
Mm.
they might even mean it in the moment. But that's the problem. Like, they can mean something in the moment, but their moments are rapidly shifting. So they might be
And
sad that they're divorcing, but they're still blaming the other person. They might go home that night and attack their partner.
yeah.
But according to their therapist is like, oh, this person's showing so much improvement. They really want to make amends. They were sitting in my office crying today, this, that, and the other. And it's like, nope, that's part of the pathology. This person's all over the place and has no accountability and no boundaries and no guilt and no shame.
Yeah. And I think that part of the reason that are so that empaths specifically, or people who are very sensitive to other people, are so likely to believe the BS is because of exactly what you said a minute ago, which is they believe what they're saying while they're saying it. And that's one of the things I hear from intelligent men and women all the time. How did I fall for that? I can read people like a book. How did I not read that person? Well, you did in the moment, because in the moment they really did believe what they were saying. And at least those who aren't on the psychopathic end of the scale, the spectrum, yeah, absolutely.
Well, and here's the thing, like, we all think that we can read people like a book, and we generally can if a person's sending out certain signals. Like, we can tend to tell who is a caring, compassionate, warm person. But
Right.
unless you really have been around the block a few times, a lot of this stuff, that the schmooziness of too much charm, of laying it on too thick, of all of this stuff, it tends to only surface and around certain people. I mean, look at Bill Cosby. I think
Yeah.
most of us would be like, oh, I'm a great judge of character. He seems like a really wonderful man. But we're only seeing a certain side of him. So,
I was so disappointed when I
oh,
found out.
I was too. I was
There were several,
devastated.
yeah,
Yeah.
several when all that Me Too stuff happened, and everybody, like, it was Samuel L. Jackson. I almost fell out of my chair about that one. Um, there were several, like, people who I just really believed in, and then I was just
Yeah.
devastated. But It is what it is. Not
It's horrible.
devastating, but
Yeah,
it's
there's that Mr. Rogers
mm,
movie with Tom Hanks that's coming out soon. And I'm so hesitant to see it because I just don't want it to burst my bubble about Mr. Rogers.
I totally get it.
I'm sure it'll be fantastic because Tom Hanks is just wonderful in everything he
Right,
does, but
right.
uh
I
scary.
know. I'm worried about that one too. I'm hoping it's not some big expose or something. It doesn't look like it is. I mean, from what I saw, it looks like it's a visionary type movie, which I'm excited about if that's the case. I like those that where they show us their genius, and how it all
Yeah.
works. And yeah,
I'm
okay,
hoping that's the case. My guess is that probably is the case because Tom Hanks is on the project, and I
right.
just don't think he'd be on a project that was different than that.
I would
But
like to agree. Yeah,
yeah, let me know when you see it, and then
I will.
screen it, and then
I'll pre-screen it for you. We'll make sure Dana's bubble stays intact.
yes, that's right. I need a happy place.
I gotcha. Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood it is.
Yes.
All right. Whew, okay, let's see. Yeah, Clint comments, narcissists take all you give and leave you when they've broken you. And that's pretty much exactly what it is. I mean, they use you up for supply, and then if you don't leave them first, then but again, remember, sometimes it's a matter of decades worth of the cycle rather than actually physically leaving you. Some people get the silent treatment instead of actual discard, or they get treated like just crap instead of actual discard. And then when the person needs something from them again, well, then they're nice again. So
Hmm.
don't assume that just because you've been married 17 years or 150 years that you are in fact not with someone like that because they haven't discarded you. Because if you think really hard, they've discarded you a whole bunch of times. Little things, you
Hmm.
know they don't talk to you for 24 hours or a month, or they start suddenly, you're the scum of the earth for a year, you don't even know what happened, you know what I mean? So just keep in mind that the discarded varies. Anyway,
Yeah.
do you have a question for us?
Yes, this is from Dark Wolf, who says, "Why would my family say my counselor doesn't know anything or that they don't know what they're talking about?"
Oh, because your family doesn't like what they said, probably. Yeah. With my ex-husband, we went to a counselor once, couples counseling, and we walked in the door, and within half an hour, the therapist turned and looked at me and said, "You need to leave this person." And that caused you wouldn't believe it, a literal screaming match between the therapist and the husband, screaming and cussing at each other like children. It was terrible. So he didn't like what the therapist said. He didn't want the therapist to say that I should leave him. He wanted the therapist to say that I was wrong and that he was right.
Hmm.
So that was, I think that's why your family would say that. What are your thoughts, Dana?
Yeah, I would agree. They see things in a very different way,
Mhm.
and you just summed it up so perfectly. Yeah, they
Thank you.
just don't agree with it. They
Yeah,
see it in a different way.
right. And they wanted a different answer. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Now, Life's Revival, hello, says, I have no gut feelings or intuition. I also put others first, ready to give help even when it's not asked for. A real problem, working on it. Okay, I think Life Survival, and I see your little queen bee. I'm so psyched by that, by the way. Thank you. I think that what you have is you probably do have gut feelings and intuition, but you don't recognize them anymore because they were sort of pushed out of you by whoever abused you. Okay, and that's okay. Um, but but as you heal, as you get better, you'll start to notice some kind of feeling, like, oh, I'm excited about this thing. That's a gut feeling. Or, oh, this thing makes me nervous. That's a gut feeling. you know Anything that you kind of makes you kind of just to do a double take or anything, just start listening, being open to that stuff. Any thought, it might feel like a thought to you, like you think, oh, I'm scared about that thing, or I'm super psyched about that thing. Those are gut feelings. Just something to think about. The other thing is, putting others first, ready to give help even when it's not asked for, is great if those people aren't trying to take advantage of you. I think, you're saying it's a real problem, you're working on it. I think it's a matter of, random acts of kindness are great, but don't put yourself in a position to be someone's servant, or to and it's hard, to not sometimes, like if you love someone or you care about someone, of course you want to do for them, you know but you do also, there has to be reciprocation, with things outside of random acts of service, or random acts of kindness. Um, like, so I think it's okay to like pay it forward a little bit, or, put good out into the world by doing something nice for someone you don't know, or letting someone pull in front of you in traffic, or like one thing I always do is if somebody's in front of me or behind me and I have a big cart full of stuff at the store, which I almost always do because I don't like to go to the store, I let people in front of me because I know that by the time I get my cart unpacked, seven more people could have already been checked out. You know what I mean? So little things like that. Um, I tip well, whatever. My point is, it's okay to serve, to give in love, like, and I mean universal love, sort of give to put out positive into the world and to make the world a better place, but don't give it your own detriment when, especially to someone who doesn't, and now I'm talking about relationships in your life, to someone who only takes. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Am I too all over the place with this, Dana? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, the original question was, she
They
doesn't feel.
She doesn't feel like she has any gut feelings or intuition, and also puts others first, ready to give help even when it's not asked for. And this is a
Yeah,
problem.
yeah, and those are two very different things. But the um the gut instinct one, I was actually writing about this earlier today. I used to have this whole spiel about how gut instincts were valid, and they are, and different parts of your brain and how it processes information, and this, that, and the other.
Mhm.
And I'm not sure that that had the helpful impact that I was hoping. And so I, I I think it's more helpful just to kind of back things up a bit and not worry about, um, oh, is this a gut instinct, or am I being hypervigilant, or is just nothing at all registering? It really just goes back to knowing when you're feeling uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It doesn't even you don't even have to go as far as figuring out when you're in danger,
Mhm.
or figuring out if you're upset. Just knowing when you're uncomfortable. It could be as little, and I would encourage you to start tuning into that on a very regular basis, because things happen pretty much, I would say at least a handful of times a week, that that something's going to happen where there's going to be, you're going to feel uncomfortable, or maybe it registers as frustration or irritation. Those are some tend to be signs of some boundary violations. And so picking up on that, and then thinking, uh, then realizing, okay, what do I need to do in order, basically, generally what kind of conversation do I need to have if you think the person's well intended, or what kind of distance do I need to get if you think that they're not well intended, in
Yeah.
order to restore that balance, to get rid of those, to soothe those feelings of frustration and irritation. But if somebody's walking too fast behind you in a parking lot, for example, we don't need to figure out, are they really walking too fast? Is it just me? Am I hypervigilant? Do I have issues with my mother? Is it because of my
Right.
ex? Do you know what I mean? Like, we don't even need to go down that rabbit hole. All you need to know is it making you uncomfortable that this person's walking quickly behind you? And
Yes.
if the answer is yes, that's all you need to know. Then you can do something different. You can stop, you can take out your phone, you can grab your mace, you can walk to another aisle. Um, you can do all kinds of things. And so a lot of it, when we suppress these feelings, because I believe Angie is right, we all have these feelings. This is human. We call it intuition, but it's instinct. It's
Yeah.
animal instinct
That's
that's
right.
human beings have. We're born
Mhm.
with it. And I've
Yeah.
I've known many different people over the years at all ranges of IQs, and I've never met anybody that really doesn't have this to some degree.
Right.
Okay. So everybody really truly does have this, unless they're completely incapacitated,
Yeah.
you know?
Eh, yep.
Mhm.
A little side tip for you.
Yeah.
If you have a pet, a cat or a dog especially, and they're friendly to most people, and somebody comes along and they're not friendly to that person, they don't like that person, consider that intuition. Just saying. I'm sorry, I had to throw it out there,
Yeah.
um, because it's real. I mean, and that goes right back to what Dana was saying about being, recognizing our human nature, or our it's part of the fight or flight thing. It's part of the whole thing. I mean, we need to know when danger is a thing. And so if a domesticated animal who's friendly to most people suddenly dislikes someone, or won't go near someone, or is afraid of someone in your life, don't think it's cute or funny. Recognize it. Do what you got to do.
Mhm. But at the same time, also, I would encourage to not get a false positive,
Truth.
because there's a lot of really awful people that
Who are great with
don't
animals.
love.
That's
So,
right. That's right.
but I think if you can notice when you're feeling uncomfortable around somebody, they're looking at you a little too long. They're looking at the waitress or the waiter a
Hmm.
little too long. They
Yeah.
say something inappropriate. They tell things don't add up.
Hmm.
Um, you feel like you're being lied to. We don't need to figure out, well, are they actually lying? Is this
Right.
really a problem? Do they have some sort of, visual disorder where they stare? We don't have to
Right.
figure all of that out. We just have to figure out what's making you uncomfortable, and then how are you going to respond to that when that happens.
You're right. And thank you for reiterating that because that's actually the point. And it's kind of like what I was saying earlier, where, you just kind of feel some kind of way about it sometimes and you don't know, can't put your finger on it, but it makes you, like Dana said, uncomfortable. That's really the meat of this
It
answer.
really is,
Yeah.
and it's such a big part in healing.
Hmm.
Healing isn't just not, like, no longer feeling emotionally devastated or just not crying every day. It's
Hmm.
really learning to reconnect with yourself. And a big part of that is your boundaries, your standards, your deal breakers, your wants, your needs, and being honest with yourself about how you really feel. And it's amazing how we as human beings, my goodness, by the time we're out of high school, we've encountered so much indoctrination and so much social programming that we've lost a good chunk of this. So even if a person has this Norman Rockwell childhood, if you're raised in society, like, you're gonna have these ideas. And I
You're
forget, I
taught
was,
to doubt yourself. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, about, oh, like, I don't want to be rude. So the need to be polite and
Mm,
taking pity on other people gets us into hot water a lot,
girl.
because we're silencing our feelings because we don't want to be rude or we don't want to offend the other person.
I'm pretty sure that's why I got married the first time. I'm not joking. It's funny, but I'm not joking. I literally, in my head, was screaming, "Run, run!" My head was
Mhm.
screaming this to me, and I could barely hear them talking during the ceremony because this was literally going on, and I pushed through it, and I literally went against my own intuition, my own body screaming out, "Don't do this," and yet I did it, and I was so proud of myself because I thought in the moment, "Oh, it's just cold feet. It's just
Yes.
this or that or whatever." But no, it wasn't. It was not cold feet.
Hmm.
It was exactly what you're talking about. And that's why, I try to if you haven't married him yet, listen to the body. I'm just saying. Okay, moving on. Do you have
Uh,
another question for us?
well, and I just wanted to add to that
Sure.
too. The more a person reads up about, gosh, kind of all of this, like boundaries and different types of communication and manipulation, the less you really have to rely on intuition, because the more that's coming into your awareness. So
Hmm.
whereas before we just knew that something was off, but now you might be much more adept at being like, oh, that's blame shifting, that's gaslighting, um, that's manipulative,
Yeah.
or that's crossing my boundary. You're able to actually articulate where the issue is, and that provides a lot of validation for other people, especially if you've got a lot of people, maybe well-intended people that are in your inner circle, maybe even mental health professionals and friends and family that are trying to convince you that it's uh, your concerns aren't valid. Oh, this person's so, Bill Cosby's so nice. If his wife was feeling stuff was off, which I'm sure she had to have been,
Hmm.
she was probably reaching out to friends and family, and they were probably telling her, well, actually, I don't even want to go there. 90 Day Fiance, that
Mm,
show, all the time. There's people that are like, I think it's weird, I think it's off. And their family is trying to convince them to keep the relationship going. And they know deep down that there's something wrong. It's very obvious to all of us as the viewer. This
right.
person's marrying you for citizenship.
Right.
And um but those around them just want to see them happy, and they want to give this other person the benefit of the doubt. So it's so important that you're able to validate yourself and be like, you know what, I'm not comfortable with this, and it doesn't matter what anybody else says.
And that's that second part right there, very important. It shouldn't matter what anyone else thinks about this type of stuff, especially when we're talking about a life decision like getting married or, moving in with someone or even moving forward in a relationship with someone who you're not sure about. If
Hmm.
you're just kind of like, well, I really like this person, but there's just something. I don't feel right about it, and you're not ready to give it up yet, then just tell that person, hey, I really like you, but I need to slow down a little bit. And if they freak out on you and they go, no, blah, you're crazy, whatever, then you know, you've already answered your own question. If they go, totally cool, I absolutely understand, and I'm willing to do that, I'm willing to slow down and wait with you or whatever, then green light, wait, slow it down, see what happens, but don't jump into something just because your mom says, because I'm here to tell you, in well, anyway, my mother made many of the choices in my life for me along the way because I wanted so badly to make her happy that when she liked someone, I married him. So,
Mhm.
yeah, be aware. That's legit. Um, anyway.
Here's a comment from Happy Camper who says
Mm,
Camille Cosby had some serious pride going on. She would often say that Bill made some mistakes, but she still hung in there. And that's more than pride, that's denial and minimization. And this is really common when when any one of us, when we don't want to believe
right,
reality,
right.
we're going to have to change reality,
It's
right?
hard to believe reality when it's something like that. I mean, she's married to Bill Cosby.
For
This guy,
decades.
right? And this was like everybody's like I wanted Bill Cosby to be my dad. You know what I'm saying? I
Yeah.
grew up with those kids. You know what I mean? And like I think everybody did. And so when you have that kind of a husband, he's like America's dad, you know, and then all of a sudden he's this guy. I mean, it's devastating. Of course she didn't want to believe it. Of course not. Who would?
And she's hearing justifications from him.
Yep.
So she's known him for all of this time. I'm sure when things were really good, they were really, really good.
Yeah.
And over the top, too good to be true, good,
Right.
right?
It
So
was probably a fairy tale. I mean, yeah.
yeah. And so for him to say, oh, well, I made some mistakes. I was at a low point in my life. I was having a bad day, a bad week, a bad year, a bad childhood. I had this, that, and the other. And he's coming up with all these justifications and he seems remorseful. I think a lot of people will tend to feel for that person in that moment and think and um, mistake their shamelessness really for honesty.
Right. But then you have to really think about this man drugged people, women, young women, and did things to them and sent them home on like nothing happened. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah.
But it's the same. Like if you watch any, these ID or
Yeah.
murder shows and they interview criminals, if
Hmm.
that's the only perspective you're getting is in the interrogation room where they're showing some sort of remorse or they're feigning remorse, I should say.
Yes.
If you don't know better, it can really seem really convincing. But then as soon as the interrogator, leaves the room, then the person's on their phone or they get the phone records and they're just saying whatever they need to say in order to get out of trouble.
Yeah.
So
I would, yeah, I would not want to have to be someone who was on like a jury for a case like that or anything. I can't even imagine how difficult that would be. Let me
yeah.
knock on wood real quick. Anyway, yeah, no good. Where are we at? Let's see. We are, I cannot tell, Dana. I do not know.
So we
uh,
should probably do one more question and then
okay. Yeah.
wrap it up. Yeah.
Okay. I'm not seeing the time, so I wasn't sure. Okay. Yeah. Let me see. Let me know if you have one. I'm just going to look really quick while we're, let's see,
Okay.
where is this test? I just want to say one thing. For those of us, Tanya Fraser asked, for those of us who haven't taken the test yet, 16personalities.com. It's 16personalities.com. It's free. I don't even I don't even think they make you give your email address, but if they do, it's not a big deal. I haven't gotten any spam. So anyway, 16personalities.com. All right. You got a question? Or I'm still looking too if you don't.
Um, I'm okay. I kind of have one. I think we would need some more context, but it's from Alexis who
Okay.
says, my dad died last year. It really put my life into perspective. The thing is, I'm stuck between what my heart tells me and my codependent behavior.
Mm.
I find ways to know what I did wrong.
I find ways to know what I did wrong.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly if Alexis, if you're still here, if you can elaborate on that. I guess I just wanted to address um, what your heart tells you in codependent behavior. The vast majority of the time, what the heart is telling you in codependent behavior tend to be one and the same. It's codependent behavior tends to be confused for being ever forgiving, compassionate, um, helpful, kind, considerate, putting other people first, but really it's a complete lack of boundaries. It's the fear of being vulnerable. It's a fear of our fear of being vulnerable and being assertive. So
Mm,
we tend to either be passive aggressive, or when we get pushed enough, we become aggressive.
yeah. Well,
So
yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. And I just want to add another thing. The way that I would, and I could be wrong, I'm going to throw another interpretation in there of codependent behavior versus what your heart is telling you. And I'm thinking maybe what she could have meant, or another way to look at that could have been, your heart is telling you that, you love the person, but you know that they're not healthy for you and you need to get away. And the codependent behavior is telling you you need to stay. Maybe, I don't know. Or your heart is telling you, you know, that you should go, that you can't fix this person, and your codependent behavior is telling you that you can't leave. Maybe. So I would say do the healthiest thing, which I think might be in this case the heart thing. But again, we need context. Those are just two interpretations, maybe, of what you were talking about.
Yeah, and
So
she clarified a little bit here. She says, "I
okay.
try to find out if there's behaviors I contributed to make it bad or to make him this way.
Oh,
I just have bad boundaries. I went to therapy." What you're talking about, Alexis, is pretty much every single person that gets tangled up with an abusive person feels this way, and it's because they have their justifications.
yeah.
And if we don't have if we're not really grounded in what appropriate boundaries are, it's really easy to get knocked off course. It's like, for example, if you had a teacher and um, let's say you were talking during a test and your teacher picks up her glass of pencils and throws them at your head and says, and you get a bruise, right?
Mhm.
Or even you dodge the glass and then you're like, oh my God, what happened? And then your teacher says, I did that because you were talking during the test. There might be, if, okay, well, if I hadn't talked during the test, then she wouldn't have thrown this glass of pencils at me. It's easy to get caught up in that. And this is how people start walking on eggshells, thinking if I just changed my behavior, they would treat me different. The reality is, it's not okay for somebody to throw anything at you
Right.
ever. So
Especially
it's
not a teacher, but
especially not a
anybody.
teacher, right? So
Right.
so realizing this is what healthy boundaries are. It's never okay for somebody to become abusive. Ever, ever, ever. It doesn't matter that you came home late, that you forgot to buy something at the store, that you brought up politics during Thanksgiving dinner, that you were talking during a test, that you did all of these things. This is where um, mature behavior comes in, where if they have an issue, then it needs to be talked about and resolved
Right.
or ended, right? Like there needs to be some sort of solution at the end, but violence is not a solution.
That's right. And recognizing, like, quote unquote, flaws in yourself or mistakes that you made is okay, but it does not, as Dana said, there's no justification for abuse. Period. Throwing a glass of pencils is abuse. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Or
Or whatever it is.
I mean,
But
or yelling at you.
yeah,
You threw at you were talking during a test, then a teacher cusses you out.
and humiliates you in front of the whole class.
Yes, or humiliates you,
Yeah,
or you forgot to buy milk at the store and your partner shoves you, or they
right.
berate you, or they call you all kinds of names because you
Yeah.
forgot something.
Or they leave and
That,
go to the bar for the night and leave
yep,
you, whatever. Yeah,
whatever. That kind of stuff's not okay. So
that's
it
right.
really helps to get out of that, because it is very difficult for people to untangle that, and they do feel partially responsible. This is why so many domestic violence survivors struggle with withholding the charges that the police want to file, because they feel partially to blame.
That's
Well,
right.
if I hadn't have confronted him or her, I knew that they'd had a few drinks in them, I confronted him about them cheating on me, they flew into a rage, I accidentally tripped over the lamp and broke the lamp, and then they hit me, and now they're going to jail, but I guess I'm not perfect either. Right.
Right.
And it's just all part of the mind scramble that is manipulation, and that is their skewed way of viewing the world. But and I would encourage you, if you're really struggling with this, to read up on boundaries,
Hmm.
um, and the more you read up on that, the more I think it'll kind of come into focus of where you start and end and where another person starts and ends and what you're accountable for and what somebody else is accountable for.
Yeah.
So it's not so blurred and enmeshed.
Right. And one more, like, just side note to what Dana said, which is entirely accurate. It is that I think a lot of times people who are being abused by narcissists tend to want to fix it. That was me, fix the problem. And so
Mhm.
what I did, maybe not everybody does this, but what I did was I would go, okay, so this bad thing happened in the relationship. How can I change myself and my own behavior so that doesn't happen again? And that Dana talked about that. But for me, it was about finding a way to fix the problem and knowing, whether I admitted it or not, knowing subconsciously or consciously that that person would not change and that there would be no closure or end of the problem unless I changed. Of course, it didn't matter because even when I did change, any sort of change on their part would be temporary until they found another thing to bother about or be upset about. So don't take responsibility for what you can do better with yourself, but don't do it for them. Do it for yourself and for moving forward, because
Mhm.
abuse is abuse is abuse, and it doesn't change. So
Yep. And it's not okay.
that's right, and you
And you
don't
didn't
deserve it.
cause it and you didn't deserve it. And you
Right.
can't, there's no way that you can fix somebody, and that the only way that we can stop it is to get distance.
Right. Somebody who doesn't want help, like if somebody's drowning and they refuse to let you help them drown, they're doing it on purpose. Then the only thing that's going to happen is if you keep trying to pull them out is you're going to go down with them, right? If you won't let go of them. And so, like, look at it like that. If you stop drowning, let go of that hand, let them go down if they want to go down. That's not your problem. You
Mhm.
save yourself if you can. I don't know if that's a good metaphor or not, but there it is.
Mhm.
All right.
Yep.
I guess we're about to wrap up for today.
Okay.
Um, we will be on Dana's channel next week around the same time, which is 12:30 Central, 1:30 what Pacific? How do you? Mountain?
Eastern.
Eastern.
Yeah.
Time zone challenge, y'all.
Yeah.
Okay, so about around the same time, Thrive After Abuse right here on YouTube. And again, Dana's at Thrive After Abuse on Facebook.com. Thrive After Abuse on Facebook, thriveafterabuse.com, Twitter, all across the internet. Find her, sign up, hit the subscribe button and the bell notification to be notified. And if you had a question you didn't get answered and you'd like to privately ask the question, look at the link in the description below, queenbee.com/ask-Angie. I have a new thing. Check it out. And the prices are lower right now or something. All right. Okay, everybody. Dana, any final words for today?
Just be good to you, be good to yourself, and focus on knowing when you're comfortable and knowing when you're uncomfortable. That's probably the best homework I could give.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
100% with you. All right. We'll see you next week, everybody. And
Okay.
I'll be back with a video later this week. Have a good one.
Mhm.
All right. Bye,
Bye.
Dana. Thanks.